and want to just welcome everyone here to, say like, what is COMAP? What is math modeling? I just want you to say that I do have this footnoted there, but I know that everyone here, I expect you know a lot, probably many things that I don't know about it, but I'm going to share sort of from the COMAP perspective, this sort of broad thing that we're thinking about that you might find more inclusive and also open up other opportunities for you to engage with COMAP, which is what we're talking about as well.
Great.
Also,
Yeah.
how do you get to use COMAP and the materials we have here? And then thinking about the future of COMAP and what we can do with you, how we can collaborate. So certainly for some folks, I see some folks out there that might know some similar things, even about these slides, because I've seen them before. So some familiar faces, but please jump in. Maybe there's some new things that you'll see here and like to jump on. And that probably leads us to the first um, question that I'll ask just to be thrown in the chat. I will try to keep it open. Is how many of you know what COMAP is before you came here? Why is the chat not popping up for me? There it is. Great. Okay, I hear an only a little bit. I like that answer. I think a lot of people, it might be a lot bit, um, or a few people have a lot bit. So yes, we have many of this is good. All right. Thank you. Thank you for interacting too. I really appreciate that. And so I'll explain a little bit. I don't know how this is, if anyone were to watch this recording, how it'd be perceived that I'm using the chat, but I get some varying answers here. I even had a hand that was raised. Do you want to say something or that go down really quickly? Because it was a just click the button.
That was just me futzing with the button.
Okay.
Sorry.
Oh, I raise my hand all the time by accident too. Even you do this, right? Then sometimes Zoom just says it's on. But we've got varying things here, so I'll continue with this. But you can always stop me if there's something that seems like I, of course, know what this is. Um, all right, so the first thing might be like, where's COMAP, right? Well, where COMAP is not where I am. So that's why I have my little house up there in northern New York and in Potsdam. You can see it right there. I describe to people that I live closer to um, both Ottawa and Montreal. Those are the cities that I consider cities that I can actually get to, um, closer than Syracuse is, if you know where that is. But COMAP, which I do have an office there, I spend approximately like a week out of the month there, is in Bedford, Massachusetts. But also COMAP's everywhere, because this goal is to really just improve math education with a focus on math modeling. And I'd say more generally, we want to encourage critical thinking using quantitative tools. And you can see COMAP's been around for quite a while. Um, as some of you already pointed out, you've known it for many of those years. So that's wonderful, and I appreciate that. I'd also like to say that, Ray, I have there. I'm some of this I've been trying them out since I've been in this role. As Allison pointed out, I've been in this role prior to this role. I was a math faculty member and did some other things like many of you do at Clarkson University at a higher ed location. And I've been in this role since July 1st of last year. So I'm nearing my 1 year anniversary and really now thinking about what are these things that we can do moving forward. One of those first things is when I described or shared with people that I was going to be leaving my faculty job to work at COMAP, they were confused because they didn't think I knew anything about geography. And I know some things, but not that much. And so I had to explain, well, COMAP really stands for this. There's math and its applications. And so that's that one part, that name recognition thing. So I'm hoping that there's something they have there, like a tagline, such as math for decision makers. I can see how excited you are. You're probably all excited by that. But trying to work some stuff so that other people who are not as familiar as many of you might be with COMAP know what we stand for right away. All right, so what does modeling mean to COMAP? So I'm going to go and use this with an example that I've shared. I have a collection of them that I shared early on. I'm going to share this one with you. And I'd love to have some comments in just a moment, right? So here we are. as many do in this, I actually don't have my water bottle with me right now. I have just like a clear glass because I'm at home. I'm able to do that. But I will tell you right now, I'm a fan of the Hydro Flask. I'd have that one. But which one would you choose and why? What are some things we'd even consider for choosing a water bottle or choosing to have water? Like I have this right now. An important thing in the summer, right? Drink your water. So are there any things you might consider um, in your choice for how to carry water? Okay, Brynja. Okay. Okay, yes. I like these. So right now, I'll try to read some of these. So size, keeping it cold, type of lid. I see more environmental impact, keeping it cool. Brynja mentioned, keep the glass, but also too many water bottles have been disposed. Bacteria growth, so cleanliness, excellent. Can I put it in my bag? So that's the size of the over, right? That also that size aspect. Awesome. You guys are killing it. And wonderful then. So maybe the next question is that I'll just put out there and without leaking, yeah, the without leaking part. Um, is this modeling? I know I didn't say what COMAP thinks it is, but I really am coming to a place that's you guys are expert modelers already. So maybe there's a question of like, would you consider what we just did right now? Did we do modeling? Did we do some modeling or what did we do? Have we started to do modeling? Is this question a modeling prompt? There's no, you can say, I'm open to all things. Okay, Brian, starting to define the problem. Identifying factors important for a model, says Brynja. Thank you. Um, building restraints leading to assumptions, says Brian. Winkle, sorry. There's two Brians. Sorry, I should have noted that. And yeah, I'm kind of with you. We're thinking about this. So potentially, and in fact, I'd say that some of those things, we're talking about size, we're talking about, I guess, heat or cool retention, right? Uh, there's some factors that we didn't mention that I often hear when I've shared this with students, might be like color or something, right? Maybe those ones aren't as quantifiable, but I love these ideas. So one of the first ways that many of us, and I don't know when you all first even thought about modeling. Well, when I first thought about it, to tell you more about myself, right? I was essentially a grad student looking for other ways to do modeling that were not financial math. Nothing wrong with financial math now, but I came from that field in my distant past. And so I was like, what other things can I do here? How can I use math to understand and explore the real world? And I didn't have any of this sort of educational background, know these diagrams. But then, of course, I think it has to happen. You come across um, Henry Pollack's sort of understanding of like, well, there's real world, there's math world. We're sort of moving between the two. And I'd even say that math world, right, can have it might have space for even talking about color and quantifying those things ourselves, even though it's a qualitative fact. So all these things we talked about, maybe we're doing it that way. And I'd say yes to that from the COMAP perspective. I'd also say something that, shout out to some of my game folks here. Hello, Karen and others that might be on there. But we've got some ideas here through different modeling, a modeling process diagram that has a few other um, aspects of the process, right, that you may engage in and that we talk about. There's other diagrams and that are out there, certainly. So this is not by any means the only one. It is from the, I point out here from the game report. So both SIAM and COMAP collaborate on that. So I thought that's the appropriate one to share with y'all. And I definitely agree with this idea. So definitely we were doing some of these things here. You even pointed it out, right? Making some assumptions, identifying, what this problem is. We might have been up here in this upper left. It's the things that are going on there, but we might have some constraints, such as I think I first interpreted her comment to be it has to fit in her bag. So that could be part of like a constraint for size where you have to see which ones fit and don't, and then also which one won't leak, right? So it's also how we carry it. So there's some other aspects there. that are helping us to, realize what might happen. Another one that didn't come up as we start to implement a model or think about it more is we might have some cost constraints that people often talk about, but I don't think I have to convince you guys that that yeah, there were some aspects of modeling there. It might not have been we went through the whole process. We only had about 60 seconds and we were already thinking of things. And as Brinia points out, everyday experience informs our discussion. Yes, right? We all have things we're bringing to the table. Well, since I put forth these things, I want to put forth ways that I'd say COMAP is further, broadening, and this comes from I feel like my experiences in my first under a year here in COMAP, where I have had the chance to be able to engage with more people and talk just about modeling since I haven't had the opportunity. I haven't been teaching and doing those things, other things tied to an institution I used to do in the past. And one of the things that I noted um, is that far too often, like even in workshops or conversations I'm having with people about the topic, I tend to neglect providing more detail and maybe being as intentional as I should be about some of the other aspects or things that modeling gives you. And so I've been framing these as sort of a math modeling mindset and had the opportunity, and this is foreshadowing, opportunities for everyone here to take advantage of what COMAP offers. And one of them is to write an editorial in the UMAP journal. Um, and so I expanded on this just a bit more. But these ideas that I have written down here are things that, like, for example, we often talk about modeling is such a, it's so great because it's really how we use these tools, whatever math tools, quantitative tools, not just math, right? It's, you want to say it's all things quantitative, big tent ideas, how we use those things to better understand the world around us. So we get to engage in a lot of the stuff that maybe I have sprinkled in here, but also I'd say these ideas of collaboration and communication are hugely important. We often talk about those, but I'd also say that even when we're in groups, we don't often talk about ideas like navigating within a smaller group or negotiating. And those are also things that I've found myself when I talk to folks saying, we also get this from modeling. And I found that that's the reason I found that to be so important. It's something that I feel like COMAP and all of us hopefully um, find some agreement with. Um, but that certainly COMAP is behind and saying like, yeah, this modeling as a mindset is really important because when we neglect those things, it's really, there's so much involved with modeling. You have to sometimes share those ideas. It's different from a classroom experience where I have a whole semester maybe to talk to the same people at regular intervals. So, like I said, once again, these ideas are always growing and changing. So everything you share is welcome. So now, what does COMAP do? What does COMAP offer that could be helpful for you? Well, we have some contests, right? And I think for people right now, in the last 15 years, a lot of people are probably more familiar with COMAP's contests than with other things that COMAP's done in its 40 plus year history. I do know that obviously I'm very familiar with SIAM's contest in high school. There's also a high school one here. This one does cost money, $100. Students have a 2-week window, and this is how it's set up. I expect, and this is a question here that I probably meant to ask earlier. You can share with me your reason. Is there like something you really want to know about? You've started to learn. Well, I'll wait. I'll wait. You can be thinking about what do you really want to know from me? Because I'm giving you this background, probably, and I already know that not everyone knows what COMAP is. So I'll share this, but you might be thinking, what would you really like to know? How can I talk to you and make this a conversation? But you can see what this is. We have these contests. They're a great way to get involved in modeling. For those of you who've had these things, and I certainly know Simeo does a great job with their contest as well. And I want to promote all things where people get experiences with modeling. On the left-hand side of your screen, then you'll see here's a poster from this past year's contest, but I have the updated start date on here for next year's contest, where there's 6 different problems that teams have the opportunity to choose from. In this case, working in groups of 3. Um, and these. So I'll also point out that your college students. One of the things that's interesting here is for the first time, and it was a little surprising to me that this data wasn't available to us. We asked students their intended major, right? We don't know where they're going to finish, but can anyone guess what the most popular major is of someone who's participating in the MCM or ICM? And there were about 29,000 teams. That's of 3 each this year. So there's a lot of students. Well, I'll take some guesses. Okay, have a guess for computer science. Any other guesses? Business, engineering, CS, engineering. And Karen says, our engineering. Is that a special engineering, Karen? I can tease her, I think. But the answer is that she's correct, as are others that said engineering. We're not specific to, like, I know there's many flavors of engineering, but that's something that, right, we can see right here. And CS actually is, so math is 3rd on the list with, CS 2nd. So interesting stuff there that's not surprising to this group, but not, I think, immediately apparent. And also might speak to different departments or folks that you know and saying, look at this opportunity, right, for students in these other areas. And also potentially speaks to math majors and saying, like, here's opportunities where this is what engineers want to do. Yes, correct. Less math majors. Oh, and now we have, are there grants available to cover the contest costs? $100 fee is for the institution. It's for each team. Sorry, for each team, not for it's for each team, Brynja. Yeah. Yes. Oh, Karen, thank you. I'm slow on reading I have to start from the top. So thank you for responding to that. And if you have other specific questions about that, let me know. That's what I'm here for. All right. Oh, I didn't want to skip ahead that. So let's talk. I didn't think I skipped too much. So contests, right? That is something we do. But the very quick overview, once again, designed to be quick because so many of you are COMAP knowledgeable, some of you less so, is to say that COMAP does a whole bunch of other stuff. For the past, starting 40 years ago, it was not just running a contest. In fact, the contest didn't exist when COMAP began to exist. So instead, it started, like a lot of things, for educational nonprofits, it started with grants, right? And there are these 5 math modeling contests, but different journals. The ones that currently exist, we have Consortium and the UMAP journals. So those are ones that I am inviting you to take a look at those if you're interested. But it's an opportunity, think about publishing your thoughts on what sort of modeling activities you're doing. If that's helpful for you, that might be a nice place to look. We have an incredibly large and huge library of curricular resources. So the things that I'm throwing a few things up here. Obviously, I have game up there to show this, joint interest and shared, sharing with SIAM. But there's other modules that are out there. So many of them. There's textbooks. Those are things that at the university level you might have encountered. That was when I first started at Shippensburg University in 2010, 9, something like that. One of those years. I was handed for all practical purposes because I was going to teach a math durable studies course. And my first take was, why am I only seeing this stuff now? I've been in a lot of math classes in my life, and I wasn't aware of all the great stuff you could do with voting theory, right? That's wonderful. So there's wonderful math there that, and COMA has a lot of those resources that in this case, I'm not seeing questions on it, but once again, talk to me about how those resources can be maybe separated from the book in different ways that are more accessible to your students or to you. Um, there's even video series that Saul Garfunkel, the founder of COMAP, created, attached to For All Practical Purposes. In fact, it was the predecessor to that, as a PBS series, that was funded by the Annenberg Foundation. So very interesting stuff. You can find those on YouTube or on COMAP's like sort of YouTube page where we sort of collected those so you can find them. But a lot of stuff is free, and I'd say that most things are free with a email sort of login firewall. So that's all that we're asking. So we can have a sense of who's actually collecting these materials. Um, all right. So now maybe switching a little bit to something that is slightly different, even though I don't know. This is for my the longtime friends of COMAP. But this is part of when I'm talking about all these materials we have, and I'm talking about thousands and thousands of classroom projects and activities, not even just dozens, right? Not hundreds. This is years and years of things being developed in COMAP. Um, and I pulled out these three to share with you. Also because I really like, and they're shared with the world too. But there's the titles of these activities. And my question for you is, what do you think are the, what do you think? Well, maybe I'll give you a little bit more background. Okay. Are you ready? You're studying them, right? You're studying them closely. This is your next quiz. So, um, I'll first say these ones are all sort of they were originally pullouts from the High Map journal, High School Math. But I thought that's a safe place. It's still, there's college students who do high school stuff, and maybe I thought there's educators here as well, so that could be an appropriate thing to do. So on our left-hand side, the picture of the graphic with all the cars. Um, this one is focused on, I'd say, like standard financial math, like time value of money is the underlying module. The one in the middle, life in the fast lane, this one pushing a cart, is a simulation module with coding. And the third one on the right is it's focused on threshold analysis. So a little bit about sort of voting characteristics, but really that threshold analysis is the focus. So my question of you is, when do you think for each one of these, you can put like a 1, 2, 3, they were presented? When were they published? And somehow I managed to lose my chat again. Pulling it back up. Okay. Brinia comes in hot and it's 1970. Oh, they're not the same year. You can have some, you can go across and say like left to right if you want to. Okay, 1990, 2005, a few guesses there. All right. Any other guesses? 2000. I like that. Okay, so this is like your left, right, left, middle, right. 80, 90, 2010. Thank you for that guess. Cars from around 1990. I like the Miata. I like that as yeah, right. You got to see catch your eye, catch something there. I like it. All right. I'll see if there's any other final guesses. All right. We'll close the window. And I'll say that Zahra, I don't know if I pronounced your name correctly, and Robert Kenan are going to be our, like, sort of, they're both winning. All right. As is Daniel. All right. So here we are. Are you ready for the reveal? Oh, it was really fast. There we are. 1989 on the left, 1992 in the middle, 1986 on the right. And there's a couple things. So, so is there anything, you guys are pretty good at guessing. Is there anything you find interesting about that? And I'm trying to think about the content. I did think these pictures are both a little bit scary, but also interesting. I like the graphics, but this isn't about the graphics. Anything from the applied math ed perspective that we're here for. Social sciences, yeah, we got access to that in modeling. Yeah, yes. I mean, Brittany, I that's how I feel too, is that in stepping into this role and being able to uncover some of these past things that COMAP has in and like there's the life in the fast lane has um has coding that it's all these modules. I should have said two. They're all 7 pages long, and that includes like a title page with a graphic. They're all really accessible for the high school level. And we still are not doing simulation and coding with regularity in high school. And this is from 1992. And just interesting ideas. There's all these things that have been there and COMAP has been doing for a long time. Are there aspects of these that are maybe could be updated? The answer, if you look at them, and you might want to, is yes. And I'll give you access to them in just a moment. So there's definitely so this enabled to say like one of the first things that maybe you're interested, people that are here, and this is certainly a collaborative type thing, but I'd also say a little bit for yourself is that what are you doing with your students right now, right? And and maybe some of those things are going to be coming up with modeling activities and projects maybe that your students are using in their classrooms or that you yourself are using in the classrooms that you teach. Um, Once again, you know that I'm coming in with a perspective and a COMAT perspective on modeling that's very big tent. So I'm we can talk about this certainly in more detail on the I need something for a certain class. And it's a good thing we have Brian here because he's going to direct you to some of those activities. But Brian Winkle, I should say. I have to put out which Brian. I apologize. But we have this Refresh for Relevance challenge. So that's one of the things I'm asking people to join. So what is it? I'll get there in a second, but it's math modeling. And the Refresh for Relevance is what? Refresh these things that we have that are pretty old. Um, right? We've got some quality curriculum that's there. Thanks, Brynja, for that. Well, I appreciate your chat very much. I'd also say that in the NCTM world, it's very much part of the discussion. If my thing would wait, right? So we actually have a new text from NCTM that's high school mathematics, reimagined, revitalized, and relevant. So, COMAP can use our words also and say refresh and relevant, so we can say those things as well. And really say we've got stuff that has great content, but maybe needs some updated context, right? So a lot of things that don't need all this extra work. If we're looking at the coding one, I think they use BASIC for that, but they also have for PCs and Macs, right? Like that's how much all this, but it's like 11 lines of code. You can imagine writing the code for that simulation. It's not hard, but students don't have the chance to do that. And that is a very obvious thing to update. So this sort of where and how this thing is. So at COMAP, this challenge where maybe this is a place that we can help you, you can help us type of thing is take a look at our old stuff. Refresh it. We're trying, this is get some authorship, for doing these things. Of course, we're not ever eliminating the original authors but I think this is a thing that is really popular. The who and when is really anyone who's interested in good modeling, and the when is now. I'd say on a more or less quarterly basis, but we just started this last year. We're running sort of our contest to see, sign up. And by signing up, you'll get access. Once again, it's a way to access so many of our materials. There's other ways to access those things completely free, but just with your email address and having like a login with COMAP. But you're very much you're invited to come and do that. And hopefully, this is a way to say, let's not start at the beginning. Let's not reinvent the wheel. There's a lot of really good stuff that's out there. And right now, if you go to the page, I'm not going to go right this second because we're inside of this presentation and it always makes things wacky. But I think that you'll find that we have things organized. There's certainly undergraduate appropriate type materials. And the rules that are not up here, it's like it's part of the The how, I guess, isn't, is not completely here. Some of the rules are there, but you might notice the rules are not very well defined, and that's because we don't want to restrict people. We want to know what people are doing that makes it better. We want to have your different perspectives. And in fact, this sort of idea, I think, leads to many of the reasons that we are here right now. Um, if I'm not mistaken, a lot of, I guess that was another thing there. A lot of the reason that we're in this meeting, you decided to join up, is because we really, in the math modeling education community, need more community. And so I think there's great instances of when we come together and do things. And I would love everyone to come in and say, yeah, this is, COMAP certainly supports that. We are supportive of completely what the SIAG here does and what so many of you do. And want to note that we can do more things. So one thing that you may not know is that COMAP is an official partner at JMM. Obviously, SIAM is as well. And I'm sure that there's plenty of things that happen through the SIAG there, just like SIAM goes to SIAM annual and SIAG has its own meeting. But COMAP has available slots at JMM. What do you want to put forth? This year we've got some math modeling sustainability. We also have a workshop that we'll be saying it's probably more aimed at people who are new to modeling, so not so much for you. But probably one of the more exciting things is working with some folks, and I'll put it up here, that are at with their support from the Gates Foundation. But this is something that COMAP does have some funding for. So we're also supporting this aspect of a workshop that's bringing together people that were involved in an earlier NSF-funded project that really had faculty from Harvard and Texas State. And UC Santa Cruz is one of the participants. So now there's a group of six. Six. Oh, I hope it's not seven. But larger institutions that primarily teach applied calculus to these really large audiences. And they all have developed modeling first calculus based on that's really in the life sciences. You can think of however you want to call your class at your university, if you have it there. And we're developing like some cool, I think they are at least, tools that people can use to make a syllabus for their course based on grabbing different aspects of different people's material. And really having a community that's saying like, look, I use these things from UC Santa Cruz or from the Texas State curriculum or UCLA, they're involved too. And here's how I piece together my class. What does it look like in your class? Here's how we're building those things, but also to have these conversations about these things, offer support for the graduate students who are doing that work, as well as the people who are the overall instructors. So that's really fun. We're going to have a workshop where I get to actually meet all these people just next week. So that'll be super. We'll meet them and we'll be doing some, I think, some more refining of these different tools we're going to have that are available. And then at JMM, I think that's really, we're looking to, we expect that time-wise, you can always, everyone who's here, ask me about it today, tomorrow, if you want to. But we'll be able to share more and prepared for it at JMM, where we're going to have these experiences of using the materials and making sure that it's accessible to all. And then I'd say, that's like some more specific case things to say, do you have some ideas that might need a little bit of funding? I was going to say we're not funding the NSF level, but what is the NSF funding level now? I don't know. That might be a dangerous thing to say. Don't put that on the message. Don't let AI hear that. Okay, but otherwise, yes, good. The next SIAM Ed conference will be held jointly. Okay, July 2026. Yes. Yes to what Allison said. And I want to point out that in the math modeling community, consider being a COMAP contest judge. I know from years of doing this through SIAM M3 Challenge, you get to meet really cool people, right? These are people that could be super collaborators. We have really interesting contests, and having the opportunity to do that. In most cases, if you haven't judged before, you're probably not going to be you know, I'd say your stronger connections happen at final judging, which still take place in person. In fact, I should say have come back to taking place in person for COMAP. That's a really great place to meet people. So that's a really nice benefit of that community. Those things happen once a year. But I think those relationships certainly grow in different ways. Like I said, that R for R or the Fresh for Relevance challenge. There's more than that's out there, but update and share COMAP materials. Uh, I don't know if you have, if you update some of those, prizes include registration at JMM. All right, so consider doing that if you are wondering what your funding looks like, so you can get to JMM, which is it in DC this year? Maybe. I see some like sort of yeses online. I think so. So that's something that once again, COMAP will. Those are prizes, right? We could talk about other prizes too. I put up internships there because that's one of the things that this year we tried to provide some, I, I'd say some assistance for folks, um, because as some REUs or summer opportunities were lost, in terms of providing support for students, if we're, as we become more prepared for this next year, we have the opportunity, and we also have more capabilities with that, just capacity wise, to host people. You might have students that are looking for what to do, looking for something to do, and over the summer, and we could work together to craft really interesting projects that connect with this opportunity to do research. Um, I have right there written, and I know you can read it. We have a lot of data. What I mean by that is we have had at this point nearly 1 million papers submitted by students for in modeling. So there is, and those papers are typically 20 or more pages long. So there are an incredible amount of thoughts, and we're starting to receive, because I've been talking about this for a little bit, starting to receive ideas from folks saying, well, can I have access to this? To investigate it more from an educational perspective, a learning perspective. And there's more than that we have, but that's definitely something. If you're talking about, what do students think about when they're doing modeling? I know that we're talking, that's more of a finished process product, but in so many cases, the way that they've approached the contest is more or less connected with the process, like sort of uh, the process that we listed before that comes from the game report, right? Where they're sort of developing and defining their model, identifying assumptions, those types of things. So that might be something that's of interest to you too. Not to mention being, once again, like this leading community members to think about other areas, like go back to modeling first calculus class. Maybe there's an area you're interested in that would be valuable, and in terms of reaching out to other institutions and saying, how do people do it other places? How can we make this, more of a community work, which I think is, in addition to being typically a nice thing for me. I usually get things done easier when there's some sort of deadline involved, but also it's a lot more fun. So um, I think that as I end this, I come back to the water bottles. In this case, we agreed it was modeling. Like I said, I also already shared my answer that I like the green one. Does anyone have a favorite water bottle up here? Or like Brittany already shared, or she's more of a, she'll stick with like an old canning jar or something like that, like me, maybe. I'll.
Reuse, yes.
So yes. All right. Oh my gosh. Toast to Brian. We're in the same wavelength there. Brian Winkle and others who may have their favorite drinking implement with them. And of course, I also think with modeling, it's like, great. So we did it. We already know what the best way to do reuse stuff is. We know all these things. So I always think when I think of stuff that's old becoming new again, I find this problem to be so apt because I know Brian Winkle saw this, but um, I looked at this, and this is from years ago, right? It's like in the New York Times, they said, well, we actually, how green is my bottle, but pretty getting in there and saying like, we sort of know what the best water bottle is. But then, oops, they also came out with, they said, well, nope, we've got in 2024, here's the best water bottles. And you know what? We can go online and people are going to rank them in different ways. So many modeling things, they're never solved, right? We can go back to the well, excuse the pun, or maybe don't, because I just go for those puns. And we can come up with more. We can go and reinvestigate things. Technology changes. We have these opportunities to do things in different ways. So, like if we think about I don't know. I was briefly, I don't know if anyone looked at it, but the shopping cart problem that I had up there before, and I'll switch here to say another thing I'm sort of testing, you know, just testing with different ways to talk about modeling. Here's another way that I think about modeling and COMAP, trying some different graphics out there. I'm not a graphic artist. That's why we have someone else who'll make this better. But if anyone thinks it's okay. But but when I think about the shopping cart problem, that, of course, was based on simulations and looking at number of items in a cart and those types of things in a 1992 shopping, grocery situation where we didn't have automatic checkout, right? We didn't have the ability to go into some stores and just swipe our credit card and we go in and then just walk out of the store, right? So there's so many things that change, but we still are looking for ways to make things more efficient, right? Some cases, or optimize things or do whatever we want. So there's always opportunity, I think, to continue to improve these models. Um, I just want to thank you for letting me share some things, and then I'd love to have more conversations